Daniel Hartley was a quiet man who lived on a small farm at the edge of the countryside. He had grown used to the calm rhythm of his days feeding the animals, fixing fences, tending the soil, and returning to a silent house where only the ticking of a wall clock kept him company. Some people might have called his life lonely, but Daniel never complained. He liked the peace. He liked knowing that every day he could work with his hands and rest at night without worry. Still, even with that peace, there were moments when he felt something missing, something he could never name. The winter that year was especially cold. Frost clung to the windows from early morning until dusk, and even the sun seemed weaker than usual. On one such evening, Daniel was finishing his chores before heading inside for dinner. The wind felt sharp against his face, and clouds of his breath curled into the air with each step he took. He pulled his thick jacket closer, hoping the work around the barn would be quick so he could return to the warmth of the fireplace. As he reached the barn, he noticed something odd. One of the old apple crates near the wall was tilted over, and a few pieces of fruit lay scattered on the ground. At first, he thought an animal had gotten into them. It wasn't unusual for stray dogs or even deer to wander near his farm during winter looking for food. But then he heard a faint rustling sound coming from behind the crate's knot, the clumsy sound of an animal. But something softer, more careful. Daniel paused. His first thought was curiosity, not fear. He took a few slow steps forward, eyes narrowing as he tried to see past the shadows. The wind shifted a bit, carrying a soft, quick-breathing sound not his own. He moved closer, and then he saw them. A woman, thin, tired, wrapped in worn, faded clothes, was sitting on the ground with her back against the barn wall. Two young girls, maybe around 6 and 8, sat close to her sides. Their little hands were holding pieces of old apples, and the girls were trying to eat them, even though the fruit was bruised and partly rotten. Daniel stopped as if the air itself froze around him. The woman looked up immediately, fear jumping into her eyes. She pulled her daughters closer, almost as if she believed Daniel would yell or push them away. The girls froze too, their small faces showing worry, hunger, and cold all at the same time. For a long moment, no one said anything. The only sound was the wind moving through the empty fields. Daniel slowly lifted his hands, palms open, showing he meant no harm. "It's all right," he said gently. "I didn't know anyone was here." The woman still did not speak. Her eyes seemed to search his face, trying to decide if he was safe. Daniel noticed her cheeks were red from the cold, and her fingers trembled as she held the apples. He could see that she was exhausted, like someone who had been pushing forward for too long without rest. He took a step back, not forwards, to show he wasn't trying to frighten them. "I'll stay right here," he said quietly. "You don't have to move. Just, you look cold." The younger girl tried to hide behind her mother's arm. The older one looked up, her lips slightly blue, as if she wanted to say something but didn't have the courage. Daniel's heart tightened. He had seen people in hard situations before, but never this close. Never at his own barn. Never a mother with 2 children trying to survive on rotten apples. He took a slow breath, then did something he rarely did. He removed his coat. The cold rushed at him immediately, but he didn't think about it. He stepped forward very slowly and placed the coat on the ground beside the woman, far enough that she could pick it up without feeling scared. "You need this more than I do," he said softly. The woman stared at the coat as if it were something unbelievable. She didn't move at first. Then, after what felt like a long minute, she carefully reached out and pulled the coat toward her. She wrapped it around her daughters first, not herself. That small action told Daniel everything. She had been fighting to protect them. Even if it meant she stayed cold, Daniel knelt down a few feet away, keeping space so she wouldn't feel trapped. "My name is Daniel," he said gently. "I live just over there in the house by the trees." The woman nodded slightly, but still didn't speak. Daniel didn't push. He could see she was frightened and exhausted. He knew trust took time. "It's freezing tonight," he continued quietly. "I have warm soup inside, and blankets. You can come in. Just for tonight. I won't ask anything from you. I just don't want the little ones to freeze." The older girl looked up at her mother with wide eyes, a silent question. The younger one leaned against her, shivering. The woman looked torn, caught between fear of accepting help and fear of staying in the cold. Finally, she whispered her first word, voice soft and tired. "Why?" Daniel blinked, confused at first. "Why what? Why help us?" she asked. Her voice cracked slightly, as if she hadn't spoken in a long time. Daniel answered with complete honesty. "Because it's the right thing to do." The woman lowered her eyes. She didn't fully trust him yet, but she could not ignore her daughter's shaking bodies. After a long pause, she nodded. Daniel stood up slowly and stepped back to give her space. He watched as she gathered her daughters and helped them stand. Her movements were stiff, as if she was trying not to show weakness in front of her children. "Follow me," Daniel said softly. He walked ahead, but not too far, just enough to show them the path, while also letting them feel safe. He kept his hands in clear sight, moving slowly, speaking in a calm tone any time he had to warn them about uneven ground or a patch of ice. When they reached the house, Daniel opened the door and stepped aside. The warmth from the fireplace drifted out toward them, and the girls leaned forward instinctively, drawn by the heat. The woman hesitated again at the doorway, her hand gently gripping the older girl's shoulder. Daniel smiled kindly. "You're safe here," he said. "No one else lives with me." She finally stepped inside. The room filled with soft light from the fire. Daniel moved toward the kitchen without making sudden movements. He pulled out 3 bowls and spooned warm vegetable soup into them. The smell filled the room, simple, comforting, clean. The girls watched with hungry eyes but still waited, glancing at their mother as if asking permission. "You can eat," the woman whispered to them. They sat at the table, holding the warm bowls carefully, almost as if afraid the food might disappear. Daniel placed a cup of warm water in front of each child. Then he stepped back again, giving them space. The woman didn't sit right away. She stood near the wall, eyes scanning the room, still cautious. Daniel understood. She had likely learned to stay alert in unfamiliar places. "You can sit, too," he said gently. She hesitated, then sat down. When she tasted the soup, her eyes softened. It was such a small thing, warm broth on a cold night, but for her, it meant safety she had not felt in a long time. After the girls finished eating, Daniel brought out blankets, placing them on the couch. "You can sleep here tonight," he said. "It's warm, and you'll all rest better." The woman looked at him with quiet disbelief. She seemed ready to speak, but then her voice caught, and she simply nodded again. The girls curled under the blankets, already half asleep from exhaustion. Daniel watched as the woman gently touched their foreheads, checking if they were warm enough. Only after they were settled did she finally sit down fully, allowing her own tiredness to show. Daniel didn't ask her story. He didn't ask where she came from or why she had ended up behind his barn. He knew she would speak when she felt ready. For now, what mattered was this: she and her daughters were warm, fed, and safe. The fire crackled softly, filling the quiet house with a peaceful glow. And though Daniel didn't know it yet, this cold winter night, the night he found a stranger and her children eating old apples by his barn, was the beginning of a change in his quiet life. A change that would bring warmth, not just to his home, but to his heart as well. The next morning arrived slowly, as if the sunlight itself moved gently, because it did not want to disturb the peaceful silence inside Daniel's house. The fire had burned low, leaving warm embers glowing softly in the fireplace. The 2 girls were still asleep on the couch, curled under the blankets Daniel had given them. Their faces looked calm, free from the fear and hunger that had shadowed them the night before. Daniel had woken early, like he always did. Years of farm work had trained him to rise with the first quiet hint of dawn. But this morning felt different. When he entered the living room, he slowed his steps. Wanting to avoid waking the family that had taken shelter under his roof, he noticed the mother sitting near the window, her arms wrapped around herself, staring out at the cold morning fields. Her eyes looked tired, but her posture showed a quiet strength, the strength that had likely carried her through many hard days. Daniel offered a gentle nod. "Good morning," Lisa said softly. She looked at him, startled for a moment, then gave a small nod in return. Her voice was quiet when she spoke, "Good morning." He didn't ask if she had slept. He didn't need to. Her tired eyes said enough. She had probably stayed awake half the night to make sure her daughters were safe. Daniel walked toward the kitchen. "I'll make breakfast." "I hope that's all right," she hesitated. "You don't have to trouble yourself." "It's no trouble," Daniel replied with a small smile. "I always cook in the morning." She didn't argue again. While he worked, the house filled with the simple smell of warm oatmeal and fresh bread. It wasn't anything special, but the warmth of the moment made it feel meaningful. The girls soon began to stir under the blankets. The younger one blinked sleepily, rubbing her eyes, while the older girl sat up more quietly, looking around as if trying to remember where she was. When they saw their mother sitting nearby, they relaxed. Only then did they notice Daniel in the kitchen. The younger girl whispered something to her sister. Her sister shook her head, but still watched Daniel with curious eyes. Daniel placed bowls of oatmeal on the table, adding a bit of honey on tops, something he rarely used for himself, but decided the children deserved today. "Breakfast is ready," he said softly. The girls looked to their mother again, waiting for permission. She nodded gently, and they walked to the table. The younger girl smiled a little as she sat down, and the older girl followed with quiet steps. Daniel waited until they began eating before he sat at the far end of the table with his own bowl. He didn't want them to feel watched or uncomfortable. Still, he noticed how quickly the girls began to enjoy the warm meal. Their small hands moved with a little more confidence than the night before as they ate. The woman finally spoke. "My name is Maya," she said slowly, as if unsure if she was doing something too personal. "These are my daughters, Sarah and Lily." Daniel nodded warmly. "It's nice to meet you, Maya, Sarah." "Lily?" The girls lowered their eyes shyly, but he saw a tiny smile on the younger one's face. For a while after breakfast, the girls remained near the fireplace, touching the warm stones and talking softly to each other. Maya helped Daniel carry the empty bowls to the sink, though he gently told her she didn't need to. "I want to," she insisted softly. "You've already done so much." Daniel didn't argue. He respected the calm strength in her voice. After the kitchen was clean, Daniel pulled on his boots and prepared to go outside. The chores wouldn't wait. But when he reached for the door, he heard a small voice behind him. "Can we help?" It was the older girl, Sarah Dot. Daniel turned and smiled. "If your mother says it's okay?" Both girls looked at Maya with hopeful eyes. Maya looked torn for a moment. She didn't want her daughters to feel like they owed anything. But she also knew they needed something to keep their minds busiest, something normal, something peaceful. "As long as you stay close to Mr. Daniel," she finally said. "We will," Lily chirped excitedly. Daniel chuckled softly. "All right then. Come on." Outside, the cold air touched their faces, but it didn't sting as sharply as last night. The sun was slowly growing brighter. Melting a thin layer of frost on the grass, Daniel taught the girls how to feed the chickens, showing them how to scatter the grain. The younger girl laughed when the chickens hurried toward her feet. Her laughter was so bright that even Maya, watching from the porch, smiled slightly. "Careful there," Daniel said gently. "They like you now." Lily giggled again. Sarah stood a little farther back at first, unsure. But when one of the chickens pecked near her boots softly, she let out a small smile too. Daniel noticed Maya watching them with an expression he couldn't fully understand, part relief, part sorrow, and part something heavier. Maybe she was wondering how long this peace would last. Maybe she was afraid to hope. Around midday, Daniel brought out warm tea for Maya. She hesitated to accept it, but he placed the cup near her hands without saying anything more. She wrapped her fingers around it gratefully. "You're good with them," Daniel said quietly, glancing at the girls playing. "They're sweet kids." "They are," Maya said softly. I haven't been able to give them much lately." Daniel shook his head. "You've kept them safe. That's what matters." Maya looked down. Her voice lowered. "Safe doesn't feel like enough sometimes." Daniel didn't press her. He simply stood for a moment in quiet understanding. He realized how heavy her heart must be, carrying responsibility for two children with no stable place to call home after lunch. The girls rested inside while Maya helped Daniel fold some blankets. As they worked, she finally began to share a part of her story. "I left our old place months ago," she said quietly. "Things weren't good. I thought if we left early enough, we could start over somewhere new. But it's harder than I thought. Every town we reached, everything was too expensive. I tried to find work, but winter makes everything difficult." Daniel listened without interrupting. Her voice shook occasionally, but she managed to remain steady. "I didn't want charity," she continued. "I always believed I could manage. But then the cold grew worse, and food became harder to find. Last night we were desperate." She paused, swallowing hard. "I wasn't planning to stay near your barn. I just needed a place to rest a bit. But the girls were starving, and when they saw the apples—" She stopped, unable to finish. Daniel's heart tightened again. He wanted to say something comforting, but he knew simple words might sound empty. Instead, he spoke with sincerity. "You did your best," he said. "Anyone can see that." Maya shook her head faintly. "I felt like I failed them." Daniel gently lifted the folded blanket and placed it on the shelf. "You didn't fail them. You reached the one place where someone could help. That's not failure." Maya looked at him for a long moment, her eyes reflecting gratitude and hesitation. "Daniel, we can't stay long," she said suddenly. "I don't want to cause trouble for you." He didn't look surprised. He had expected this. People who lived through hardship often felt guilty for receiving kindness. "You're not causing trouble," Daniel replied softly. "But we can't depend on you," Maya insisted. "We'll leave once the girls regain some strength." "You don't have to decide that today," Daniel said calmly. "Just rest for now." Maya lowered her gaze, unsure how to respond. She wasn't used to someone being patient with her. She wasn't used to someone offering help without expecting something in return. As evening came, Daniel prepared dinner. This time, Maya helped with simple tasks, cutting vegetables and washing dishes. The girls sat near the fireplace, drawing shapes on pieces of old paper Daniel found in a drawer. Their laughter filled the room again. For the first time in many weeks, Maya felt a small sense of safety growing in her heart. Not complete safety, just enough to breathe without fear creeping into every thought. After dinner, the girls fell asleep quickly, worn out from their day on the farm. Maya stayed awake a little longer, folding their clothes neatly on the chair beside the couch. Daniel stood near the fireplace, adding another log. "You're a kind man, Daniel," she said quietly. "Not many would do this." Daniel shook his head. "Anyone with a heart would." "No," Maya whispered. "Not everyone." Daniel turned toward her, seeing the weight her voice carried. He didn't ask questions, but he understood. She had seen enough in life to learn that kindness wasn't always guaranteed. "You and the girls can stay here until you figure things out," said gently. "You don't have to rush." Maya looked at the sleeping faces of her daughters. Their breathing was soft, peaceful. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice full of emotion she tried hard to hide. Daniel nodded, offering a small, warm smile. He didn't know how long they would stay. He didn't know what challenges might come next. But he did know one thing very clearly. He wasn't going to let them face another cold night alone, and for the first time in a long while. The quiet house felt like a place where something new, something hopeful was beginning to grow. The days that followed passed gently, like soft snowflakes settling on quiet ground. Life on the farm slowly found a new rhythm, one that included small footsteps running across the yard, children's laughter echoing near the barn, and the gentle sound of Maya's voice calling her daughters inside. When the wind grew cold, Daniel found himself waking each morning with a sense of purpose he had not felt in years. When he stepped outside to begin his chores, he no longer worked in silence. Sometimes he heard the soft hum of Maya preparing breakfast, or the girls whispering to each other as they waited for the fire to warm the house. It was simple, but it brought warmth to places inside him he had forgotten about. Still, he noticed something in Maya's eyes, something unspoken. She smiled more often now, and her shoulders no longer carried the same heavy tension as before. But every evening when the sun dipped behind the hills, a quiet worry appeared on her face. She watched her daughters carefully as they slept, as if afraid that peace was something too delicate to trust completely. One morning, while Daniel fixed a loose hinge on the barn door, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned to see Maya holding a small basket of bread she had baked. "You've done so much for us," she said softly. "Please take this." Daniel smiled gently. "You don't have to repay me, Maya." She shook her head. "I'm not trying to repay anything. I just want to do something useful." "Everything you do here is useful," Daniel said kindly. "You being here? It's made the place feel alive." Maya looked down, her expression warm but unsure how to answer. Compliments were something she was still learning to accept. They stood there in comfortable silence until Sarah and Lily came running across the yard, their cheeks flushed from the cold. "Mr. Daniel?" Lily shouted happily. "Look what we found." She held up a small, smooth stone shaped like a heart. Daniel chuckled softly. "That's a lucky stone," he said. "You should keep it." Lily beamed with pride. Sarah stood a little behind her, shy but smiling, her hands tucked into her sleeves to stay warm. Maya watched them with quiet gratitude. For the first time in a long while, her daughters were behaving like normal children, not scared, not hungry, not tired. They laughed easily now, and when they ran across the farm, they did so with a freedom that made Maya's eyes fill with emotion. Later that afternoon, when Daniel was gathering firewood, Maya approached him again, her voice calm but serious. "Daniel," she said, "I need to talk to you." He lowered the bundle of wood and nodded for her to continue. "I've been thinking," she said slowly. "We can't stay here forever. You've helped us more than anyone else ever has. But I don't want to take advantage of your kindness." Daniel leaned against the wooden railing, listening quietly. "You're not taking advantage of anything," he said. "You and the girls are safe here. And safety matters more than rushing to leave." Maya sighed, rubbing her hands together out of nervousness. I don't want to cause you trouble. We came here with nothing. You didn't ask for us to stay." "I don't want anyone to think," he gently interrupted her. "What others think doesn't matter." Maya paused, surprised by the simple firmness of his words. Daniel continued, "People help people. That's how it should be. And I don't want you to feel like you're a burden. You're not." Her eyes softened. She looked down at the frozen ground beneath her boots. "You're a good man, Daniel," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "I'm just trying to do what I can." But even with his reassurance, Maya still looked conflicted. Something weighed on her, a worry deeper than modesty or guilt. The next evening, after the girls fell asleep, Maya sat alone near the fireplace, staring into the flames. Daniel walked in quietly, carrying 2 cups of warm herbal tea. "You look like you have a lot on your mind," he said gently as he handed her a cup. She accepted it with a soft thank you, then hesitated before speaking. "I'm scared," she confessed. Quietly, Daniel sat down across from her, giving her space to talk. "Of what?" he asked softly. "Of losing this," Maya said, her voice trembling slightly. "This safety, this peace. My daughters haven't had a real home in months. Every night before we got here, I worried if they would be warm enough, or if we'd find food the next day. Being here, it feels unreal, like it's too good to last." Daniel listened, nodding slowly. "I understand," he said. "When life has been hard for too long, it's natural to doubt good things." "Hey." Maya looked at him, eyes shining with unspoken fear. "I don't want to leave, but I don't want to stay if it puts you in a difficult position." Daniel leaned forward slightly. "You staying here doesn't cause me any trouble? This house, it's been empty for too long. I didn't realize how quiet it had become until you and the girls arrived." She blinked, surprised. "You say that like you want us here?" she whispered. "I do," Daniel said simply. "But the choice is yours." The fire crackled softly, filling the quiet room with warm flickering light. Maya lowered her head and wiped her eyes gently. "I don't know what the future holds. I don't know how to rebuild my life yet. But staying here, it feels like the first step." Daniel nodded with gentle understanding. "Then let's take it one day at a time." Over the following weeks, Maya began helping more around the farm. She swept the floors, cooked meals, organized shelves Daniel hadn't touched in years, and even helped repair small things inside the house. She never acted like she owed him anything. Instead, she worked with a quiet dignity, as though she finally believed she had a place where her efforts mattered. The girls grew healthier too. Their cheeks gained color, their smiles came easily. And they followed Daniel around the farm like two loyal shadows, eager to learn everything. One afternoon, Daniel taught them how to plant seeds in the small greenhouse. The girls listened carefully, their hands brushing soil with excitement. "If you take care of them," Daniel explained, "they'll grow into something strong, like us." Lily asked cheerfully. Daniel smiled warmly. "Yes, exactly like you." Maya watched from the doorway, her heart full of warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. One snowy evening, after a long day of work, Daniel found Maya standing outside on the porch. The wind pushed lightly through her hair, and she hugged her arms for warmth. "You okay?" Daniel asked as he stepped beside her. She nodded. "Just thinking about what?" "About how much has changed," she said softly. "A month ago, we didn't know where we'd sleep. I didn't know if I could keep my daughters safe. But now, they laugh. They run. They sleep without fear." Daniel looked out at the snowy fields. "You gave them strength. I only offered a roof." Maya turned her head slightly. "You offered much more than that. You gave us hope." Daniel felt a warmth in his chest at her words, but he stayed quiet, letting her speak. "I want to stay," Maya said finally, her voice steady. "Not because we have nowhere else to go, but because this place feels like home, and you've treated us like family when you had no reason to." Daniel looked at her gently, his voice warm. "Then stay, for as long as you want." Maya exhaled slowly, the tension leaving her shoulders. For the first time since she had arrived, her expression held real peace, not temporary comfort, but genuine trust. Inside the house, the girls were giggling softly as they colored pictures near the fireplace. Their laughter drifted through the doorway like a gentle promise of new beginnings. Maya looked toward the warm light inside, and back at Daniel. "We're grateful," she whispered, "more than I can ever say." "You don't have to say anything," Daniel replied. "Just be here. That's enough." She smiled, a real smile, warm and honest. And in that quiet winter evening, something changed, not suddenly, but like a soft dawn rising after a long night. Daniel didn't just feel needed, he felt connected. Maya didn't just feel safe, she felt supported. The girls didn't just have shelter. They had hope, their lives once filled with uncertainty now had a path forward, a path they would walk together, step by gentle step. The barn where Daniel had first found them eating old apples became a memory they would never forget. Not because of the hardship it represented, but because it marked the moment their new life began. A life built on kindness, trust, and the unspoken bond that grew stronger with every passing day. And so, the farm once silent and still became a home filled with warmth, laughter, and the promise of brighter days.